All right, you want to get started?
Started. Ready when you are.
All right, y'all, welcome back to the Rabbit Hole Show. Um, we all have struggles, we all have a story, and the good news is we are not alone. And this week we have a special friend and guest, someone who came into my life in 2019 at a low point in my life. And we're here. Been a 180 since then, and here to talk about that time and some other topics. But Janna Coleman, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing better than last time we talked.
Uh-huh. A lot. A lot.
A lot better. And we can talk about that. And I want to talk about that because I want people to hear kind of what my mindset was and what I was going through from someone who was, a therapist of mine at one of the treatment centers. But talk or share a little bit about yourself with our listeners, kind of so they can get an idea of who you are.
So I am Janna Coleman. I am a licensed professional counselor and a supervisor in Mississippi. And I'm also a board certified telemental health counselor. So I can do telehealth counseling, which is very important today. I have a lot of cats.
I got 8 we were talking about.
8 cats. Yeah, some of them were from the pandemic and some of them are because our local shelter lady knows what a sucker my husband and I are. I have a private practice here in Oxford, Mississippi. And before that, I worked at a center for like a living facility for individuals with intellectual disabilities. After that, I did college and career counseling at Ole Miss. And then I came to Oxford Treatment Center where we met. And after that, I went into private practice because I really, really wanted to focus on the clients and what they specifically need and not just what is dictated by some kind of protocol.
Yeah, and that's the issue with a lot of treatment centers that I've seen personally that I've been to. You can't help everyone specifically because it's not one-on-one. You have large groups. Everyone has different needs. So can you talk to us a little bit about that kind of, at a treatment center, rehab center, and as a counselor, you want to do some things, but you can't because you have a certain agenda you have to follow per se.
Yeah. And usually, even if it is, like we were talking about earlier, a dual diagnosis facility, you still are to treat the addiction first. But the problem is that the addiction comes from something else. And I will say it again that, I don't think that marijuana and alcohol are gateway drugs. I think that trauma is a gateway drug. And if you don't recognize and start to treat that and heal that trauma, or even worse, if you try to say that someone is using trauma to manipulate their treatment, then you're not ever going to get to the heart of the issue because you're going, you're going all around. You're going all around it.
Yeah, and that's something for me. The first rehab center I went to, people were saying I was an alcoholic, and I was like, I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew I needed to go and get help for something. Because a lot of incidences happened when I was under the influence of drugs and alcohol. But there had been trauma that I had never dealt with. And until I dealt with that trauma, life didn't change, really just kept getting worse, and just kept stuffing those issues down, and kept trying to cope in ways that I thought would work. And there's some people who can figure it out, and there's others like me who have to have a life-changing moment to be able to be like, I can't do that anymore. And that was me, life support and facing prison time. It wasn't even facing the prison time. That was part of it. But the big thing was waking up off life support. And, I commend those people who are able to be like, I can't do this anymore. That wasn't me. I had to have a significant consequence to be like, the risk and the reward don't, and, but yeah, the dual diagnosis, because for me, I was like, I want to go to a dual diagnosis place. And this was after I was in Hopeway in Charlotte, and then ended up at Davidson Mental Health due to suicidal ideation, and told them I need a dual diagnosis place. My big thing was anxiety, depression, trauma, and she said, well, where do you want to go? I said, well, I want to ride horses, because at Hopeway prior, they had mentioned that equine therapy was going to be coming to their program, and I had ridden horses before, at family camps, young life camps, and so at Davidson Mental Health, they sent me down to Etta, Mississippi, which is the PHP program of Oxford Treatment Center, and was there 2 weeks. I think I rode the horses once, maybe twice, and I wanted to ride them a lot more, but it's hard when you have a couple hundred people at a treatment center.
Yeah, and never got to ride the horses.
Yeah,
and now they bring the horses to the outpatient. Because of course they do.
Always after I leave a program.
Was after, but I mean, that was just like within the last year, probably.
I mean, but equine therapy is amazing. Horses can teach you a lot, and you can learn a lot, and it's very calming.
And I think that the way that they use them to model different things is about addiction and everything or trauma, like even trauma, it's very interesting. And animals in general, I have learned, are very healing, because I sometimes bring one of my 8 cats. Her name is Pearl. She has one eye. She was an immediate foster fail, or foster win, as we call her. But I bring her to the office, and I have seen her actually when people, are bringing up something that's tough, or they're, getting a little teary or something like that. I've seen her jump over into their lap, crawl up and snuggle next to them, and like just start purring. And then, they're kind of able to get through that tough moment a little better. And if I ever don't bring a cat, everybody's like, where's the cat today? Like, where's Pearl? We miss Pearl. And she has her own Instagram, and it's at Pearls, PURRRLS of Wisdom on Instagram.
I mean, animals are definitely a big part of comfort when you're going through, difficult times in life. For me, especially, just because they don't talk back, they aren't scared of you, they're just going to love on you, and that just brings a sense of calming, or has to me, and people that I've seen, it just relaxes you and helps you get through that difficult time in that moment.
It's a good model of empathy, because a lot of people think empathy is giving you some words of wisdom, or some saying at least, it wasn't this or that. But empathy is sometimes just sitting with someone, just being there. Like, you don't have to fix it. You don't have to, you just acknowledge, like, this person needs my presence.
And that's what I needed a lot of too. 'Cause I like to be around people, and I've kind of always been around people, especially, since 2016, but even prior to that. And so now I'm learning how to be okay and be alone with my thoughts, and not having to be around people all the time. And it's difficult and causes a lot of anxiety, but I know that it's not going to be forever. And I'm having, as we were talking earlier, I'm basically a year old. I'm
Yeah.
kind of retraining my brain, my thoughts, my routine, and figuring out the new healthy me. And that just doesn't happen overnight.
Building those new neural pathways, as we used to say. If you do something different, get up and put your pants on left leg first instead of right leg first.
Mm-hmm. And like when I'm feeling anxiety now, having those people that I can reach out to, and 3 of those people are people that I never would have reached out to before unless I was in trouble. My mom, dad, and sister. And then getting out and going on a walk, just doing those different things that I used to not do for coping mechanisms. And for me, listening to podcasts, sermons, because the things that you put into your mind and watch and, can have a, big impact and outcome on kind of you as a person as well.
Yeah.
Would you agree as a therapist?
I would, and I think there's a bug here, but sorry, rabbit hole, but appropriate. Yes, and I was going to say earlier, you were mentioning something about intrusive thoughts, and what a lot of people don't, kind of get their mind blown by is that not all of your thoughts are your own. And that, but if I thought it was my thought, but no, sometimes it's something else, somebody else's voice from your past that is telling you something, or something you've seen on TV, or something you've heard in a podcast or read in a book, and that's floating into your mind. And that is not exactly your thought, quote unquote. But your reaction to it is your thought. If you that intrusive thought, like you said, comes into your mind and you think, oh, why is this popping up? And so, that's not really what I want to focus on right now, but I can process it and mull it over.
Yeah, that's something, and I might have mentioned this before on the show, but a couple months ago, maybe, I was talking with my therapist, Dr. Dodd, at Level Ground Christian Center here in Charlotte. And, I was thinking about death a lot. And he was like, he was asking me questions, kind of trying to figure out, and it wasn't suicide or anything, but it was just death, kind of like I might be in a car and just imagine getting in a bad accident and, how I would die in that car accident, just things like that. And he was asking questions, and we got to the bottom of it. And there's a show, The First 48, a murder show, documentary kind of thing, and that's the only thing I watched. Like, whenever I had the TV on, it was that. I would fall asleep with it on, and he was like, "You got to turn that off. Like, all you're thinking about is death. All you're seeing is death. So no wonder you're having those intrusive thoughts about death." So, and when he's like, "You got to turn that off." And, me, I was like, okay, I'll turn it off, but I'll watch it here and there. But I haven't turned it on since that day because I don't like thinking about death. It's going to happen. It's not something I'm scared of, but I want to think about positive thoughts now and enjoy life. And, I was given a second chance at life and want to fulfill that purpose. And, we're all going to have those negative thoughts. Those thoughts come in that aren't ours, as you were saying. And now I'm learning, okay, how do I check those thoughts? And I guess we had on last week, UJ, kind of fact checking your thoughts and holding them up, if you are a believer, holding them up towards scripture and just what in life. And, is this true or is this false? Kind of getting to the bottom of those thoughts, and holding them captive. Are they yours, or are they something that, you've seen, heard, watched, whatever?
I call it putting thoughts on trial. And
that's what he said. Yes.
You put your thoughts on trial and you act as judge and jury, and you have to determine, is this a fact, not an opinion, but is it a fact? And then you kind of have your list of for and against this being the truth. Or
and you have to do that because you have thoughts coming in all the time.
Uh-huh.
And for me, it tires me out. I'm ADD, ADHD, and I get tired just, okay, trying to fact check all these thoughts. And like, I know this isn't my thought, but why are you popping into my head? And, I'm only a year old, essentially. I'm having to retrain my brain. So I'm having thoughts all the time, and it gets tiring, but.
Mm-hmm. And the thing about ADHD is that you're not just having one thought, you're having that thought and its brother and its cousin. And, then all of a sudden you're thinking about that thought's like first grade teacher. And
I'm like, how did I get here?
How did I get follow the train backwards?
Yeah, and that's tiring.
Mm-hmm.
But that's hence why we got the Rabbit Hole show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna go down. It hasn't yet.
Let's talk about the kind of my time at Oxford Treatment Center, and I'll just kind of let you take this part away.
So the thing that I remember the most, we were outside because sometimes we got tired of sitting in group rooms, and that's if we ever took y'all outside, it was because we were so tired of sitting in a room.
We were too.
And y'all were too. And so we were out on the multi-purpose court. It was like basketball, pickleball, something like that. And we were playing this. It was like if the statement was true for you, you took a step forward. And if it was, and if it was something negative, you took a step backward. I don't remember exactly what it was, but
I think it was something along those lines.
And of how to like kind of visualize how far along you were in your recovery. And I remember before, like even way through the game, you were like at the fence. And it was myself and other therapists. And I know we were like, now, are you sure this is where you're at? You're like, yep, I'm good. I'm ready to go. And for some reason, it was before, I can't remember exactly what happened, but as you were walking away, you muttered under your breath and called us bitches. That's what it was.
Right at that time.
Uh-huh.
Unfortunately, yep.
Yeah. And I can't remember. I think it was me. And I screamed out, what did you say? We're walking away, and I like wanted you to know, like, that, hey, I heard you. You're not as slick as you think you are, but you probably wanted us to hear it.
I said it loud enough to hear, but maybe they won't, but I want them to know I'm frustrated and don't want to be here.
Yeah. And I think you were not my biggest fan for a while.
No, I was not. What?
And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. Because you meet people where...
And I was not at a good spot.
Nope. And you weren't ready to be met. You weren't ready to be met yet, but whenever you needed somebody, I think you let me be that person, and I'm glad that you did.
I did. Yeah, because a little bit later on, I asked if I could get some more privileges based off time I had been there compared to others. And again, now looking back, everyone's at different spots, and you can't, he's been here 3 weeks. He can go off. I wasn't ready to go off campus and do other things because I wasn't ready to be met and be where I needed to be and have that acceptance.
I won't say that you weren't met. I'll take that back. I'll say that we had to come a little bit further to meet you.
Oh, yes. I made it difficult. Because I wanted to be home. Because it had already been a long year, and, I made it even a longer year after that. But that was part of my story and journey. But yeah, so asking for more privileges, got denied, and that set me off. And went to my room and barricaded myself in, packing my bags to hit the streets of Oxford, and packed everything up. And the two sweet old nurses handed me my medicine, a lot of it, and saying, are you sure this is what you want to do? Is this the right thing to do? And I said, I'm going to figure it out. and I'm not sure if you came out, someone came out, and those two nurses definitely talked me down, and maybe they brought me into you, and
Maybe
I think
I
they
want
might have.
I want to say there was another client in there, but I can't remember who it would be.
I think there might have been another client. Maybe
It was probably Parker.
Yeah, Parker. Shout out to you. Yeah, and you and I, in my mind, you're the last person I wanted to talk to, but you met me where I needed to be met that day, and very sympathetic and heard me out, and you can talk a little bit more about that if you want.
Ooh, that's been a minute. I remember, like, you were in a bad place that day. You were not in a good place. And somehow we got you into PAX in Memphis.
Yeah.
And I don't know why you were willing to listen to me that day.
God. I think
yep.
God was like, you need to listen to her because you're not going to survive the streets of Oxford with how your life's going right now.
It would have been a long walk to town.
There wasn't anything around except a funeral home and a couple townhouses.
And I remember whenever they built it behind the funeral home, I was like, what are we going to do? Like, point at it and say, if you don't stop using, that's where you're going to end up.
It's the truth, though. Yeah, it's the truth.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't. Go ahead.
I just remember I went in your office, and I'm sure I think I even cried probably at one point and just broke down. I was just exhausted.
Yeah.
And you just listened to me and were very compassionate, and were able to find me a place to get into very last minute, and even got a ride from, not from you, but you coordinated a ride.
I think did they come and pick you up?
They came and picked me up and drove me to Memphis from Oxford, and I can't remember the guy's name, but we just talked life for the hour and a half or 2 hour, however long the drive was, and got to Memphis 9 or 10 that night, and and started the journey at Memphis and was there a month and a half, and that was a rough journey. I don't even know if PAX is still there.
I don't know either. Sometimes, like, I'll have people come by my office and they'll drop off cards and stuff, and I haven't had PAX come by. So
yeah, I think I've heard that they're not there, and in treatments, and this is something maybe you can talk on, and this is my perspective. There's good people who worked at PAX, I believe, and know there's good people who worked there. But as you were saying earlier, you're dictated on what you can do and teach and stuff.
And a lot of it's insurance companies. Like, it's so insurance driven, and we have to show that you're making progress, but you're not making quite enough progress that you're ready to go home. And it's a beast. We love it. We hate insurance.
Oh, yeah. And I remember one time, this is when I was at Hopeway in Charlotte. I was on the phone with the insurance company. They were trying to, I think, step me down to like IOP maybe, or maybe from residential to PHP. I can't remember, but step me down. And I was like, I'm suicidal, so if I kill myself, is that going to be on y'all? Like, like I said that to the insurance people. Like, I was like, I'm not ready. Like, why are y'all doing this to me? And we're very lucky and fortunate to have a close family friend who worked on that insurance side, the billing, and she's out of that, so she was able to help kind of navigate and use the certain words kind of to help our family when dealing with the insurance and billing, because it costs a lot. And I remember at PAX, like, I forgot how much, but the insurance, I mean, I was getting drug tested a lot there, and insurance, I don't know if insurance wanted me drug tested all the time, but that racked up several $1,000s, and was even getting, bills for that last year even. And so insurance can be good, but it also can be, an enemy, and just something that makes the situation even worse.
And what a lot of people don't realize is that if I, as a provider, or any of the other providers, write something that we think is good enough, that's going to get you the level of care you need, and sometimes they might disagree. If you, as an individual and as a client or a patient, call your insurance and say, this is this is not what I need. If you take that step to advocate for yourself, that can go a long way.
Yeah. And I tried, and it didn't, but I was at a good place, like the treatment center, Hopeway here in Charlotte, an amazing place. But I wasn't ready. And my journey was still, because they were trying to release me back to work, and that was not a safe place for me, and brought up a lot of anxiety, trauma that kind of re-triggered me into taking steps back. And then that's how I, a day before my, I think 28th birthday, got sent to the psych ward for suicidal ideation, and then got Davidson Mental Health for 10 days, and then met you. And it's been a blessing, because without you, I don't know where I would be, honestly, because I was ready to hit the streets.
Whenever I first started, whenever I was in counseling school, I always said there are two areas that I never want to work in. And one of them is career counseling, and one of them is addictions.
And you've done both.
And I've done both. And I did not love career counseling. I loved working in addictions. Like, I loved it. I didn't love the bureaucracy side of it, but I loved the clients that I was around every day. I loved my coworkers that, were just a solid team of individuals. But I really loved the clients because they are smart, they are creative, they are funny, like the best people that I have ever, come across in my life. And I love to watch y'all grow and root for you and everything. And I forgot where I was going with that.
Because a lot of times we don't have cheerleaders or those advocates. Not everyone's blessed like I am to have the family who's stuck by my side, and a community that kind of rallied behind me, and a lot of that's due to my family. But that's something I thank God for every day, and don't have the answer of why was I born into this family, and X, Y, and Z was not born into a family like mine, and had it even harder than I did, and didn't succeed. They OD'd and died, or prison for life, or whatever. That's something that that's a question when I get to heaven I'm definitely asking. Because if it hadn't been for my family, I would be in prison or dead, without a doubt. And so that's very rewarding, as being able to see that and see the success stories. It's hard when you don't have those success stories. Clients don't make it, unfortunately, and it happens more often than not.
It happens a lot more often than we would like. I kind of get a little wonky at the end of June, like beginning of July, because it's the this time of year is the anniversary of the deaths of 3 amazing, funny, just full of life while in recovery, young men that all passed away just kind of within a month of each other. And it's heartbreaking to know how their story ended when they, they were such bright individuals, and the world was such a wonderful place with them in it.
Yeah, it's hard. And there's, like I said, there's some days that I'm like, God, I wish you just would have called me home that day, but he didn't, and I still have purpose to fulfill down here, and I've been given that second chance, and so I'm not going to waste it like I was before. Life looks a lot different now, like we were talking about. It's a lot slower, but I'm having to retrain and pick up new routines and habits, and there's a lot of relationships I'm still rebuilding because of the damage that I caused, and it's beautiful, but it's you still have struggles even out of active addiction. It's just different struggles.
I see people every day that have just that struggle, that have things that happen, and they've never been addicted to a substance. Some of them have and are doing life as well as they can, but we've all got tough things, especially in the past 3 years of the pandemic. Like it's been one day we were at work talking about oh man, what do we have a protocol in place for if this does happen? And then it was all of a sudden, oh, it's here, and we're completely closing our doors, and everyone is going online to telehealth. And what will that even look like? Because when I was in school a decade ago, when I was in counseling, getting my master's, even as close as 10 years ago, we didn't think that telehealth would ever work. There were talks of like using distance therapy, and everybody, the general consensus was, this is not going to work because you won't be able to see people's facial expressions and their body language. But it's worked, and it's worked so well, and it's opened so many doors. There are clients that I have never met in, outside of telehealth, but I have as good a therapeutic relationship with them as I do with people who have been sitting, have came and sat in my office every day for the past 3 years, or not every day, but every week. Some of them would probably like to come every day, but
there's days where I needed to come every day, and I'm thankful now where, I go about twice a month. And I'm sure Dr. Dodd knows when I was not doing well, because he wouldn't see me for a stretch of time because of his past. He's able to read through some bullshit. And, I thought I was slick at times and could get away with it, but I could never get away with it for him. And so that deterred me at times from going in. But in a blessing, like I've never had to prepare. Like prior to him, there was therapists, outside of treatment centers that I was like, I thought I had to prepare going in because it was kind of dead. And I felt like, but with him, I could go in and he'd ask a couple questions, and then the ball gets rolling, and an hour goes by before I even know it. And he brings out stuff that I didn't even know were an issue or thought was very minimal. And, he's able to help me work through it. And so speaking of that, what were you about to say?
Can make those connections for you that you might not be seeing. I will mention this. I have a very dear individual who started seeing me in IOP at the treatment center, and we identified that one of their biggest hangups is the thought of powerlessness, because powerlessness for them equals weakness, and we've done a lot of work on that. And this individual is having a surgery this week that is going to put them in a position where they can't lift anything. They are asking for a lot of help. And whenever we were talking through it, I looked at them and I said, because you don't like to be powerless. And they kind of go, oh yeah, there's that. And I'm like,
Yeah,
so,
'cause for me, I didn't want to be seen as weak. I wasn't going to let anybody push me around. And, I had that, kind of stone cold killer look and vibe. And you got to meet, him a little bit.
you thought you were real scary.
You what?
You thought you were real scary. And
And there was times where I did get pretty scary, but then there was, I didn't want to come off too scary, but like I wanted to be known that here's how I'm feeling. And
you were so angry. Like, you were so angry.
I mean, there's a lot of trauma I never talked about, never dealt with. And due to that, more trauma happened.
And the body keeps this. Have you heard that? The body keeps the score?
Yeah, they talked about that book at the ranch in Tennessee. And that, I actually have the book.
I do too. It's sitting right here.
Yeah, it's because the body does keep the score. Our body remembers everything, whether we remember it or not. Our body has, there's different triggers. Our body talks to us, and you can probably talk more about the book than me, but
it's a concept that I bring up a lot, and usually at least more than that. But trauma is not, it's not stored in memory, it's stored in the body. And so if you walk into a place that somehow reminds you of somewhere that was not a good place, your body kind of automatically goes into that defensive, fight or flight mode involuntarily, because you sense that this is not safe. And it's kind of when a lot of times if ever somebody says, I've been feeling real anxious, or I've been feeling real irritable or angry or depressed the past few weeks, I'll always say, has anything ever happened to you during this time of year? And they might think back on it and they might say, well, yeah, this was the time of year that, my so-and-so passed away, or this was the time of year that I was in a car accident, or that I had this really horrible surgery. And it's kind of the same way that I feel a little antsy around this time of year, because I know to me, it has been, a time of loss, but your body is remembering, when it was 1,000,000 degrees outside, this is when those things happened, or you had this, this terrible cold, and it was in, December and it snowed horribly. This is when this bad thing happened. And so if those kind of situations come up again, your body's remembering like, oh, when this happens, a bad thing is going to happen.
And that's how my mind and body worked until, and it still happens, but I don't have those, traumatic triggering memories as much now. Like I can drive about anywhere in Charlotte and something has happened to me. But I now know kind of who I am, and I'm able to be comfortable with who I am and accept myself. Whereas before, I would drive by, an IHOP or the AutoZone or the tattoo parlor, or the list could go on. But those places identified who I was to me because of the events that happened there. And all the hospital visits, I drive by the hospital all the time, and I countless times how many times I had been there, and it was, I could never escape, and until I was able to just, be free. But real quick, I want you to talk about something that I did a little bit at the ranch in Tennessee, but EMDR. Kind of talk to us. What is EMDR, and for listeners who don't know anything about it, just what is it and kind of how it works?
So I was kind of working into that with the body keeps the, with the
I
body
figured
keeps.
that's where you were going.
We were all on the same brainwave. But EMDR stands for eye movement reprocessing and desensitization. And so what a lot of people don't realize is that whenever you're working through a trauma or something like that, it's not necessarily about completely forgetting that it happened. It is being able for that event to come up and it not send you into fight or flight mode. It's, to be able to face a trigger without it triggering you. And so with EMDR, I'm terrible at explaining it, but I'm good at doing it. So what it is it works off the idea of bilateral stimulation, which is a fancy word that just means moving both, like doing something to both sides of your body at the same time. And it's why a lot of people are able to process when they go for a walk or they go for a run or they ride a bike or do some type of exercise where they're moving both sides. So we use like a back and forth hand movement, and we stimulate your eyes to move, and you follow it with your eyes, and you follow that hand movement back and forth. And it's kind of like when you're in REM sleep and your eyes move back and forth. Both sides of your brain start kind of working together to process what's happening, instead of that trigger comes up and your amygdala tells you fight, flight, freeze, or your prefrontal cortex is trying to like reason through everything and all the emotions that are coming with it. And if I'm saying any of this wrong, somebody please like write in and do a correction, because neuroscientist, I'm a therapist. And I will admit that I may get the wording or something wrong, but you start out by rating your, disturbance on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is none and 10 is the highest disturbance possible. And I'll sometimes have people tell me 25, 12, it's higher than 10. And so what we do is with each pass of, the bilateral movement. And some people do it with a light bar, and some people do it. I've done it with some people by like tapping their hands or tapping the tops of their knees. It's just, and then some people do it through, they have these buzzers that buzz one hand at a time, and have also like an audio component. So there are a lot of different ways to do it. My preference is either the hand movement or tapping. But the analogy that our trainer, Gene Hawks, who's fabulous, gave us was, it's like you're on a train and you are watching the scenery go by. And every once in a while, we're going to stop the train and you can get a longer look at the scenery, but then we're going to immediately start back up again. We don't give you enough time to start trying to overanalyze it. And what that does, that is the desensitization part of it. You are becoming, it's almost like exposure therapy in a way. But the great part of it is you don't have to sit down and like tell your therapist that whole story and relive it and, re-go through it yourself. You're just kind of picturing it, whatever component of it is. And you can break it down as small as, it bothered me how people laughed at me during, the laughter of the people during this one incident. And you focus just on the laughter. Or you can bring it full out. You can process that whole incident that the laughter was a part of, or you can process kind of that plus everything that attaches to it. Because things connect to each other. And this incident is going to make you think of this incident is going to make you think of this that happened when you were 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So we desensitize. And one of the things we have you do at the beginning is you identify a negative belief. And that is a negative belief about yourself based on that incident. So it might be something, that happened and you think I'm responsible, or I'm not in control, or I'm unloved. And those are like your core beliefs that started when you were a kid, and just over time, different incidents attached themselves to that and grew into this huge tree that kind of just wraps its roots around your life. Mm. And so we take that negative belief based on that incident, and we bring it down from a 10 or however high it is, and we continually bring it down to maybe we get it to an 8, and that's really good. That's good. You did some work. Sometimes you're going to get it all the way to a 0, and that's fantastic. That is the goal, but I always tell people, don't say that it's getting lower, because you want me to think it's getting lower. I want you to tell me the true number of how you feel it. So after we get that down as low as possible, we go back in and we put a positive belief or more adaptive belief in its place. And that's the reprocessing part. And so we learned that in this incident, I'm not responsible, or I can take appropriate responsibility. Or where you felt I'm unloved, you learn I am loved, or I'm happy with how I'm happy with myself. Whatever feels more true to you, and that you can start to believe in a more positive way about that incident. And then whenever that trigger comes up again, you think of the more adaptive belief than the negative one. Did that make any sense at all?
That made sense to me.
Okay.
So, because I did it a little bit at the ranch in Tennessee, but I was only there a month, and correct me if I'm wrong, but EMDR is not something you do once or twice, and there's a process to it to be able to do it correctly and work through that trauma and those beliefs or non-beliefs, and take that 10 or down to an 8 to a 6 to a 4 and hopefully a 0. But it's just not a one time fix it. It's a continuous kind of process, and I'm sure every individual's different, but what's like an average length of EMDR that you have seen kind of?
Well, so the first, but you don't just jump straight off the boat process.
Correct. It's kind of like orientation to start.
It's kind of an orientation. You have to, a therapist has to make sure that you have the self-regulation skills that it's going to be safe to do EMDR, and not just bring up this trauma and then say, okay, well, I'll see you next week. Or, okay, well, you're discharging tomorrow, and I just brought up this horrible thing that happened to you when you were 3. But we start off with giving you some coping mechanisms. And the first ones that I do are a container, which can take any form that you want it to take. Did you do a container? People do things differently and have different terminology, depending on where you were trained.
I do not remember. He had a script he read, and then and we did he did his finger. For me, I would have rather had the vibration, the buzzers, because I'm more hands-on. My ADD with the finger kind of was a struggle. But I mean, and we were in a dark room, because I know the setting kind of is important as well. And then going to what you were saying, making sure they're not discharging tomorrow or whatever, because you do get kind of tired and a little dizzy even post EMDR session. So that's something you need to be aware of as well.
And when you if I'm not feeling well that day, like if I have a migraine or I'm just exhausted or something is up, I'm not going to do EMDR on a client with a client because they will, it's not going to be, it's exhausting to perform, and it's exhausting for the person that's having it done because your brain is doing a whole lot of work. And for example, the individual that's having surgery and is in like a lot of pain right now and was, talking about like, I'm having some negative thoughts regarding this. I said, I am not going to do, I think it will be in the future beneficial, but we're not going to do EMDR surrounding these thoughts right now because you are in too much pain. You won't be able to fully engage with it. But I always start with a container, which is something that is strong enough to hold whatever you put in it, comfortable enough inside that whatever you put into that container will stay there. And it has a two-way system so that you can put things in and take parts out as you need to process. So you don't have to take the whole thing out. You can just take a little bit of it. And over the time that I've been doing this, I've seen some really, really creative containers. I know someone whose container is an oyster, and they're an artist, and we actually I brought materials and they created a visual representation of their container because that was helpful. I know someone whose is a root cellar. And so they put things into the root cellar. I
like that one.
Yeah.
Because you're, we have our DNA, but you have your roots essentially, and you grow into that tree kind of, or whatever. Yeah. And your roots kind of define you. And I like that one.
One of mine, because I have a couple, is a hole on the beach. Like there's a beach that I really love, and that beach is actually like my safe place whenever I'm doing, whenever I need a safe place. But I dig a hole and I put whatever it is or whoever it is in a hole. And I mean, it's a safe hole. They're in the sand and they're warm and they stay there. And I smooth the sand over the top of it and keep walking. And somebody told me that it's really funny that I chose digging a hole in a material because I have so many cats. I was like,
there we go with the cats again.
Should have done a little that would have been great for something.
I didn't make a container, and I only did maybe 5 sessions, if that. So I would say not enough. But he had me come up with a safe place, and mine I think was the beach house.
That other one I always do is a safe place, so that, and the purpose of those things is to help you self-regulate, so that if something really tough comes up, say we're focusing on a particular incident and we don't want to branch out into the whole negative belief system. We're just trying to keep it focused on that one incident, but you become flooded during the session by other thoughts and other, things that come in. We can pause and we can put something in the container, or we can, you can go to your, mentally to your safe place. And then, you are not just completely a wreck by the end of the session. And it's also important to have a follow-up visit, like after each EMDR session, because we can talk through, and a lot of times your brain is still processing for a day or so after, and other things will come up for you that you'll, other realizations you'll have. And it's good to always check in on that. My favorite part about EMDR, other than the fact that you don't have to like re-traumatize yourself by telling the whole story, is that it is kind of portable. So if you've worked on one thing, you can go to a completely different therapist to do EMDR and just pick up where you left off.
Mm-hmm. Because you're not having to tell the full story. You're rating it on the scale, and it's basically moving to a different part of your brain to where it's not traumatic. Mm-hmm. It's still a memory, but it's not a traumatic memory, correct?
I have a client, and he always tells me, he's like, you can put me down as the poster child for EMDR. I will tell anybody that it works. Like every time he comes in, he's like, hadn't had any more dreams. His was, they were PTSD dreams. Mm-hmm. Hadn't had dreams. I've thought about it, but I haven't dreamed about it.
Yep. That means it worked. It was successful.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so you're, you do telehealth, and, you know, you have your own practice now. Mm-hmm. Briefly, before we wrap up, tell us about that. And are you taking on any new clients for any listeners that might, you know, be looking for a therapist? Just discuss that just a little bit for any listeners that might be exploring new therapists and telehealth. For me, telehealth was something I never, you know, wanted to do, because I need the face-to-face, the hands-on. So I've been able to find that, but telehealth is very important, and it can reach a lot more people than just your office can.
Yes. So telehealth, one of the biggest problems that we have right now is that in the counseling profession, there is not like universal licensure. So you're licensed by state. So I can do therapy in Mississippi because that's where I'm licensed. But therapy takes place technically where the client is located. So if you're in North Carolina, I'm not licensed in North Carolina. You know, there is thankfully a it's called the Interstate Compact that is kind of in the works right now, and Mississippi's part of it. I think at least 9 other states are part of it, but that will allow us to reach individuals in more places, because there are a lot of therapists are overrun right now. Like there was some therapists that have like 3 to 6 month waiting lists, but having the ability to see a therapist possibly in another state will be helpful. It will be very helpful. Like I have clients that live in other parts of Mississippi, and that maybe because of they are from a small town, and they, you know, it's better, you know, they would rather see someone that they don't know and that doesn't know the people that. You had another part to that question, and it
was about your practice and seeing if people, you know, if you were taking on new clients. So anyone who's listening in Mississippi or whatnot.
I do.
Yeah.
Have some availability, and right now I have a fabulous intern for the summer. She's amazing. Her name is Casey Ray Young. Hey, Casey Ray, and
hey.
She is taking new clients right now as well, and is very, you know, she's finishing up her hours, so that is an important thing for her to be able to see some folks. I do have some availability, and that's, I mean, I would love to talk to anybody that needs. I accept Blue Cross United, and I'm in network with the VA Care in the Community.
And that's big, the VA.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what's the other? Oh, and I do self-pay. So
cool. Well, I will recommend you because you helped me. So anyone that is in the area and hopefully soon out of state, with that interstate law you were talking about, because COVID, I think brought a lot more people to therapy. Not saying that was, I think it allowed people to be like, okay, I need therapy, even though they might have needed it before. But a big pandemic causes a lot of, anxiety and brings a lot of things to the surface that weren't there originally.
A lot of adjustment disorders whenever everyone had to go home and just sit at home pretty much all day home. It was a very hard adjustment.
Yeah, it was. So before we wrap up, is there any advice or something that you kind of live by or someone once told you that has helped you? But what advice would you give to our listeners?
So and I thought about this earlier, two of my favorite pieces of advice that were given to me, and I'm pretty sure that it was by the same person, and I will shout out Martinez Fitzpatrick. I don't know if you remember Martinez. Very, very brilliant. Love her, and funny. Love her. She told me whenever I first started working in addictions, number one, meet people where they're at. And I think that's a good thing for us just in general, just meet people where they're at. And sometimes you have to come a little bit further than other people. Sometimes they're not able to come and meet you halfway. You've got to go a little bit further. And with that being said, she also told me, don't work harder than the patient. Because I was so compassionate. I I wanted people to do so well. And I would get very frustrated at the beginning, why don't they want to do this work? But you got to let other people take responsibility. You've got to let other people step up and not do all the work for them. Because if you do all the work, then they won't learn how to do it themselves. And you're also going to exhaust yourself trying to people please, which I see a lot, or try to change someone else's behavior. The only thing that we can control is what we do and think and say.
Correct. And it took me a lot to learn that, several years, but that's 100% correct. You can only control yourself. You can maybe impact others, but you can't control what they do, say, and you can't, they have to accept, and be ready to put in the work to make the change. And hopefully for people listening and others out there, they're ready to make that change if need be, before it's too late, like me. And have to have that big rock bottom, because I had several little rock bottoms that could have been the rock bottoms, but they weren't big enough for me to be like, okay, I need to make a change. It took last year for that to happen, but that's what it took, and everyone's different.
Everyone's different, and everyone's rock bottom is at a different level. For somebody, it could just be, that they opened a work email and started sobbing because their boss called them out. That might be it. For other people, it might be,
facing prison or waking up off life support.
Yeah.
And then others, they don't wake up, and that's that's the harsh reality. But it doesn't have to be you. If you can make that change and are ready to make that change, that doesn't have to be you. But the reality is, it's not going to be everybody, sadly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking time to come on and talk and just reconnect. And because you're someone who's very special and, you know, are a big part of my journey. And
you.
never thought, you know, when I last saw you, I'd be talking to you again. So it's been a treat and an honor. So thank you.
Thank you. It's been an honor for me. I am so touched. Like it really means a lot.
Well, it means a lot that you would want to come on and talk, and especially after, you know, our last encounter. I guess our last encounter was, you know, a little different as you were helping me kind of, and I was breaking down to you, but overall, might not have been the best first impression, but you met me where, you know, I needed to be met. And that meant a lot and helped me a lot, and I've never forgotten that. So
thank you. That you know, to be a small part of someone's journey is, you know, it's more than enough.
Mm-hmm. Because, you know, to me, I'm a success story. You know, I was at rock bottom. I was struggling, you know, active out on the streets, you know, doing whatever, controlling my life how I wanted and dictating how I wanted it to, and that didn't get me very far. And but I've always remembered, you know, just in your office that day, and you taking the time to help me and kind of meet me where I was. And yeah, so thank you. Well, thank you all for tuning in this week to the Rabbit Hole Show. Again, subscribe and follow on your platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and then on Instagram, the Rabbit Hole Show, all underscores. If you have any comments, questions, want to talk more about EMDR, or get connected with Janna, email the rabbit hole show 21@gmail.com. But again, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to y'all next week. Thanks.